Ukraine is facing some tough changes in the coming months for one simple reason. The war won't end. The war won't end in the year 2025 and maybe not even in 2026. Various media personalities, politicians, former politicians, and so on are saying this. And against this backdrop, what's even worse, friends, is that decisions are being made in Ukraine that will cost a huge amount of money, but won't do anything at all to strengthen our country's defense capability. I would like to raise this issue today. Why? Because for such actions by the authorities, everything that's being done now, not for the country's defense capability, everything that's being done now for money laundering, for embezzling budgets, for covering up those suspected of embezzlement, and we see a lot of that as well. All possible means will be used basically to protect their own people. At the same time, ordinary Ukrainians will continue to sacrifice their lives, and unfortunately nothing can be done about it. All right, let's now analyze the statements and take a look at some very interesting decisions made by the authorities from another perspective. First, we have the journalist Portnikov. Some people like him, some don't, and opinions about him vary. But I would like us to analyze his statement together now.
I don't see any objective conditions for ending this war as such at all. I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. The only thing we should have done was to prevent a major war. Everything else doesn't matter anymore because Russia's war against Ukraine has become the norm of our lives. There will be no other norm. Stop thinking about what won't happen in your lifetime. You can hope that at some point the hot phase will end, and at that moment you still won't be in the grave. That could happen. There's a chance. Not everyone has it. You might think there will be a pause between one hot phase, so to say, and another. That could be true. During those pauses, you also have to decide what you're going to do. You stay in the country, you leave the country, you build your life abroad, you build your life in regions that you consider safer for living, business, investment, and so on. Such a pause is possible, but there will be no objective conditions for the Russian-Ukrainian war to end at all during your lifetime.
That's a very interesting thought. And in fact, many people talk about this. And that's actually one of the reasons why people ask why the borders aren't open now. It's because those who stayed in Ukraine, especially men of conscription age, don't have a choice. They only have one choice. Either go outside or stay at home. If they go outside, then, well, if they don't want to end up at the front lines, they have to be very careful. If they want, that's a separate choice. But some people were left without a choice. That's why they just stay at home and wait, not for some total end to the war, right? Not for all the security guarantees and everything they talk about, but just for some kind of ceasefire so that the borders would open and they could leave. And I think that the analysts in our government also understand this very well, that a part of society, even after we are promised security guarantees that the war is over and all that, will still sell all their property, if they have any, and leave the country. They will go to other countries and look for a better life there, understanding that a new, so to speak, hot phase of the war could start at any moment. And this, by the way, once again confirms that today all the efforts made by Europe, by America, and also by the Ukrainian government, the only thing they can do is to pause things for a certain period of time. The hot phase, yes, to halt and freeze the front line. When this will start again, no one knows. Will it be like, for example, in North and South Korea, where there has been, well, a kind of relative peace for decades? Or will it be like, I don't know, like in Israel and Gaza, where from time to time these conflicts just flare up? There is a stronger side, there is a weaker one, and what happens, happens. It's absolutely unclear. What do you think about this? Write in the comments, and now we'll listen to former Foreign Minister Kuleba, who also has his own professional predictions.
There is no progress and no movement toward ending the war. I would really like to share some good news with everyone that we just need to hold on a little longer. but maybe I was always wrong to believe that you have to rely on reality to realistically assess the situation and then make decisions that allow you to turn the situation in your favor. The real situation today is that we are not moving toward ending the war. Why? Because our partners are not making decisions that would put Putin in a situation where he is forced to reconsider his goal in the war. Right now, he has a maximalist goal. It's just like at the invasion start. The goal remains to break Ukraine and capture.
Let's be honest, actually, those efforts, those sanctions, whether it's 17 or 18 packages, however many there are, a package of packages, how they came up with it in Europe, this doesn't work on Russia. All of Trump's talk, and in general, the United States doesn't work on Russia. Do you know what works on Russia? Right now, North Korea is working for Russia, China is working for Russia, helping Russia. Iran and a number of other countries as well. Smaller ones, not as military oriented as these countries, not as big. But they have quite a few allies, and they're gaining more. Recently, there was information that they already want to bring in as many as 25,000 Cubans who will fight on Russia's side. And that's about it. So we can see that Russia is also preparing for a prolonged war, when they will need to bring in people from other countries in order not to completely destroy their own demographics. And basically, they're already doing this now, as we can see from the reports that are actually coming from their side. And these reports are quite often also confirmed by Ukrainian intelligence, Ukrainian special services, and so on. The question is, since many people are discussing it and making various statements, these people say that the war will last for a long time, the war won't end, or if it does end, it will only be for a very short period. Others say no, Russia will soon collapse, that it will collapse soon, even before the end of the year, in a few months, in a few years, and so on. And here, actually, these are all guesses, both from one side and the other. These are just guesses. And here, every Ukrainian needs to make some decisions for themselves, because life goes on, and here you need to decide what to do, whether to stay in Ukraine or to leave, or if you've already gone abroad, which country to stay in, where to build your life. Europe recognizes the war will be prolonged and now prefers to end temporary protection for Ukrainians rather than continue it for those Ukrainians who are in Europe, and they want to transfer them to other legal statuses. So they would legalize themselves, and the idea of Ukrainian refugees would vanish in Europe, so that all those people who are considered refugees would simply be regarded as foreigners who are on the territory of these countries. Well, as we know, the first country to switch to such a system is Poland, which is when temporary protection will actually be abolished starting from March 4, year 2026. The rest of the European Union has extended the temporary protection until March 4, 2027. But again, there are already talks and discussions going on there about what to do next. If, for example, the war lasts for many more years, it can't be that Ukrainians who have already been living in these countries for several years will continue to remain in this status. The status must change, clearly showing Europe understands this well, that the war will last for a long time.
It means to reclaim everything and regain control of the country. We need him to switch to a limited objective, to maintain control over what he has already seized. Actual control, not legal, but actual control. Then the conditions to end the war will emerge. We cannot turn the situation around on the front or inside Russia economically on our own. Our partners are not making decisions that would allow us to jointly turn the situation around on the front and worsen Russia's economic situation. Accordingly, Putin himself is fighting the same way he did a year or two ago.
That's the story. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of Kuleba. Those who have been watching me for a long time know this very well. But here, in my opinion, he said everything very appropriately, a very appropriate statement, which also, shakes up this over-the-top victory mood from our telemarathon a little bit. Because on the telemarathon they say, Russia is always collapsing, Putin is dying daily, and everything's just fine. Everything is great and powerful. So based on this, on the statements that the war will not end, it basically gives us a complete understanding that as of today there are no prerequisites, that Uncle Trump will come flying on a magic carpet and stop this war. Based on this, they are making, in my opinion, these are simply inadequate decisions aimed at stealing money, our European partners' money. Let's listen. Here we have the head of the National Bank of Ukraine, Pishny, and their wonderful proposals. Instead of, for example, shaking down commercial banks a bit, which started making easy money and earning super profits during the war, instead of somehow introducing restrictions for them or collecting more taxes from them, the National Bank of Ukraine is not doing what it should be doing.
We have to mint 20 million coins every year. This year, if we manage to do it in time, if we make a quick decision soon, then maybe we'll even change our plans and start minting not kopecks, but shags. Next year, if possible.
Shags. Yeah, we've heard about this many times already. We've talked about it. That instead of the kopek, they want to introduce a new coin, the shag. So instead of kopecks, there would be shags. Let's keep listening. I have many questions, both to the National Bank of Ukraine and to Pishny, and in general to the Verkhovna Rada, which even brings such decisions to a vote.
If we'll be able to be successful in our communication with the parliament and convince them to support this, then as soon as next year we will be minting not kopecks but shags. And by the way, this means that there will be no additional expenses from the budget for this initiative. No withdrawal or replacements. As simple as that. What we used to have to mint additionally in order to maintain the quality of coin circulation will now be minted in the form of the shag coin.
That's the story. Look, what a nice freeze frame. That's the story. What do I want to say? He's saying that no additional expenses are needed. There are just kopecks and there will be shags, and every year these coins are minted again. But Pishne probably forgot to mention that all our documentation, all our paperwork, and everything around us is indicated in kopecks, not in shags. Everything needs to be changed. There are a lot of regulations, a lot of different systems and everything else where kopecks are also indicated. In order to put all this in order and change everything completely in terms of documentation, to bring everything in line with the law, it will take an enormous amount of man hours, an enormous amount of resources, money, time, and so on, to change the regulatory legal framework which has actually existed since the introduction of the hryvnia and kopecks in Ukraine. It was built precisely on this system. Now, everything that involves kopecks needs to be changed. And you know what else? This is despite the fact that inflation and the exchange rate of the Ukrainian hryvnia compared to other world currencies show that kopecks as such no longer have any financial value. And it's very hard now to even find a product where you need to spend this, where you need to spend exactly, where you need to use kopecks, right? Because we already have coins minted in hryvnias, 1, 2, 5, and even 10. I understand all except for the hryvnias. And who the hell needs 10, 25, 50 kopecks, which are still left now? How much longer will they matter or be used? 1, 2, or 3 years? It's unclear. And now a lot of money will have to be spent to change the regulatory legal framework. Instead, I think this money could have been spent on other needs, of which there are quite a lot in Ukraine right now. And against the backdrop of the ongoing war, and with people telling us that this war will last for many more years and with no elections, powerful decisions are being made here. To rename kopecks to shag, this is a very telling example of how priorities are set in Ukraine right now. If you are in power, if you're poor, you must donate, enlist, fight, do everything required and stay silent. If you are in the Verkhovna Rada, then you can do interesting things like this. Rename kopecks to shags. That's the story. What do you think about this? Write in the comments.